Hi everyone, welcome to We Deliver podcast. My name is Fatuma Hassan. I am a Communication and Public Relations Associate at Crestwood Marketing and Communications. Well, today we shall be discussing matters to do with crisis communication and how organizations should prepare themselves to handle crises whenever they occur. To start off, what is crisis communication? Crisis communication is the strategic process of managing events that poses a threat to an organization. Crisis communication is very strategic and it needs to be planned for in advance before it actually even happens. So at times, a crisis might just occur without an organization being aware of it, and sometimes it can occur while the organization, has information that it's going to happen. Either way, there is a way of navigating your way once the crisis has happened. And in this case, today I'm going to take you through the pre and the post of crisis communication and how to go about it. Well, first things first. As an organization, the moment you have a company running or you have a business, you must prepare yourself for anything. And that goes for positive or negative vibes, as I'd like to call them, because you can never be sure what will happen. A customer might wake up one day and decide that your product or your service is not satisfactory, or something might just arise, and then it will pose a negative image to your organization. And it's at that time that you come in with your crisis communication and you make sure that you manage the crisis before it gets out of hand. So how do you manage crisis before it actually happens? You do that by coming up with something that we call a crisis communication plan, which you make sure that you come up with in advance by looking at things, how you run things in your organization. There is something we call SWOT analysis, and this simply means checking at the start of the year, checking at what are the strengths that lies for your organization in the market, at the same time looking at the weakness, opportunities, and lastly, the threats. The threats are what we normally will transpire and become a crisis. So when you come up with a crisis communication plan, it will enable you to prepare in advance just in case anything goes south, because nothing is certain. Anything can happen, you never know. But when you come up with a crisis communication plan, it helps you to navigate and manage a crisis before it gets out of hand. I'd like to give you an example of a food brand is producing food, and then suddenly out of nowhere, maybe an individual starts complaining of stomach problems when they consume products from this particular food brand. And within a short time, other people also come in and they also complain about the same thing. So now it's a food poisoning kind of narrative that is going around as far as a particular food brand is concerned. That right there is a crisis. And you might find that maybe the food brand had not seen this crisis coming, or they might not even be aware of it. But then now that it has happened in that moment, as the food brand, as the person who is in charge of communication, or any other person for that reason who is in charge of crisis communication within the organization, that particular food brand, you would want to come out and first of all assure your clients and any other potential consumer that yes, whatever is happening right now, we are acknowledging it, but we cannot give you a specific reason as to why it is happening, but we are promising to look into it, and then later on we will come back with a detailed information as to why it's happening. And at the same time, you want to pass your apologies to the people who've been affected. This way, you want to come out as being empathetic also, that you don't lose your customers, because coming just to defend your brand without acknowledging the people who have been affected is not good for business. So if you want to retain the ones who've already been affected, then you want to also pass your regards. And if you establish the cause of the crisis and you realize that it was your fault as an organization, then, going an extra mile and taking responsibility of maybe paying for the hospital bills for people who have been affected by the food poisoning maybe, or whatever crisis that your organization might be facing, is a good way to manage it and to make sure that you do not lose clients at any given time. If you do not manage your crisis properly, chances are it's going to affect the long-term image of your organization. And as a brand, you do not want to find yourself in such like a situation. So by coming up with a crisis communication plan, you'll be able to avoid finding yourself in tricky situations. The other thing you need to know as an organization before a crisis happens is that you can prepare by not just coming up with a crisis communication plan, but by also training the necessary individuals within the organization. So this goes for everyone in your organization, because we all know that the very first voice of any brand is the employees. So the moment you train your employees on how to handle this crisis before it actually happens, it places you in a very good spot when the crisis actually happens. I'm not telling you that a crisis will happen, but I'm just saying that it's good to plan before it actually does, because they say better safe than sorry. Yes. Yeah, it's good for you to just train your employees and make them know that in case this happens, this is how you're supposed to navigate, and this is how you're supposed to eventually tackle and handle a situation that will have a negative reflection of our brand. Well, now that we've established what to do during the pre-stage of a crisis communication, which is mainly coming up with a crisis communication plan and training the relevant people within your organization, because you don't know when the crisis happens who will be the spokesperson of the organization. Well, the second thing to do for any crisis communication is during the crisis. There is something that we know as impromptu crisis, like it just happens. You did not see it coming, and it just happened in that moment. So what happens if a crisis has already happened? What do you do as an organization within the moment? The very first thing you want to do is acknowledge the crisis. As an organization, it's never advised for you to shun away or run away from the crisis, because if it's your if an employee, or rather if a customer client has said that they're not satisfied and they are blowing up social media handles for your brand with negative comments, and they are inciting other people into doing that, you do not look away and say this is not our problem, or they will just say and they will sleep at night. No. What you do instead is you want to come in and you want to acknowledge that actually this crisis is happening, and at no given time, without doing your research, are you advised to give any information. So what I would tell you as someone who is a owner of a brand and you're listening or you're watching this video is make sure that when a crisis happens, you take the time to acknowledge it, and at the same time, you ensure and you assure your clients, potential clients, and the ones that you actually have that, yes, it has happened, and we're going to look into, the causes, and we shall eventually give feedback on whatever it is that we have found. So it is really, really advisable that you acknowledge instead of running away from it, and that is because sometimes this publicity might happen and then you feel like your organization is being affected, but they say no publicity is bad publicity. So when it happens, take it and run with it, because eventually it might be the reason why your organization or your brand gets the visibility that it deserves. You never know. And plus, I'd like to tell you that when crisis happens, you will not pay for it. It is just free PR. Rather, yeah. So take advantage of a crisis when it happens. Just make sure that you acknowledge it and you inform your clients on the causes and do your research and then come back with feedback. Yes, another thing that you want to do while during a crisis is happening is choosing effective channels to communicate with your target audience. So right now, you'd want to send press releases. If your organization is a big organization and it's known and you know that your reputation is on the line, you'd want to send press releases, call for media, and just let people know what it is that is going on, so that, because if you don't acknowledge or if you don't use these channels to communicate with the media and people relevant to communicating this information, is they are going to bring a narrative. If you don't bring a narrative yourself, they will bring another one for you, and they are going to put it out there, which is going to be worse than the actual situation that maybe is happening at the moment. So I'd say always consider the kind of channels that you use. So that goes for traditional media as well as the digital space. You cannot afford as an organization to shun away again from the digital spaces, and that goes for all the social media platforms. Yes, now that I have taken you through what it is that you should be doing during a crisis, I'd say that the very first thing that you ensure you do finally after you've established a crisis and you've acknowledged that it is happening and you've communicated with your people and the clients, you want to make sure that you conduct an evaluation of the crisis. Yes. After you've communicated about it and then you've found your findings, you want to see, where did this crisis come from? What is it that we did, or what caused the crisis to happen? What is it that we can do in future to make sure that the same mistake does not apply? And in case the same thing applies in the near future, how do we tackle it without causing a fuss, without making people feel like we do not care about them, without putting our brand on the line, and so much more. Yes. Now, without boring you with so much information, I really hope this video is helpful as far as crisis communication management is concerned. Thank you.